Now, as you know, in natural disasters, it comes down to often the Premier of a state to be able to pull all of the information together and to set a nice, even tone. Yes, you have to tell people what is at stake, but clearly you don't want to panic. Personally, I think the new Premier of Queensland, David Crisafulli, is passing that mark with flying colours. But we had the opportunity to go to the emergency centre in Kedron, in the middle of Brisbane, a bit earlier today. And we went behind the scenes with the Premier, not just about the messages, but how they are being put together and what information they might know just before us, and why the Premier is committed to the second he knows, we know. David Crisafulli is the Premier of Queensland. Lovely to see you. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances.
But it's great you're here, though. Thank you very, very much.
Now, from behind us is where you give the message multiple times a day, and that message has been one that feels like it is extending and it's coming and then it's going. What's your sense in and around making sure that people don't get frustrated with how things change?
I've been through a lot of these. They are anything but predictable, and they'll speed up, they'll slow down. Overnight, it did a circle on itself and then started coming towards the coast again. All we can do is give people information, and you mentioned about this room. I'm a big believer in you just give people info, and if you continue to do that and you say to people, well, this is what I know. Today, in one of our earlier press conferences, I had literally received some information 5 minutes before we went and did it, and rather than wait for the next one, I'll give it to people. I have this fundamental view that this authoritarian, I'll keep the information, it never works. It ends badly for everyone. I'm always of the belief, if you've got information, you give it, people will make the right decisions.
So can you give us an idea of operationally how all of this is working, where obviously you could go crazy running around and asking everyone to refresh their screens, but I'm assuming there's a set time each hour where everything gets refreshed. Yep. There's a top of hour. Give us an idea of what happens in between the press conference.
So the Weather Bureau update every 3 hours. As it gets closer, when it's crossing, we'll do that hourly. So you have satellites that go over it, and in real time that information comes back. And what it does is it enables us to say, okay, this is the track. So we then say this is how quickly it's going per hour, and then you model what it looks like. So a couple of days ago we thought it was going to cross the coast deep into Thursday night, early Friday morning. That was about high tide, early morning Friday high tide. That's where the big risk is. That's now pushed back, and so initially it was pushed back into Friday, and I thought this is great, but the modelling's now showing it going deeper into Saturday, so we're back with the same headache. The reason why that's so problematic is if it crosses on high tide, that's when those storm surges can really matter, and some of the predictions are 0.5 to 1 metre, some of them even a little bit higher, over and above that highest tide. That's a problem. So that's why we said to people, go onto that website, and we've got all of the councils have fed in their data, and people can see if they are in a storm surge area. And if you are, we want people to have an evacuation plan. Can you go and stay with friends and family? But just absorb that information and make an informed decision. If they're not, that's the vast majority of Queenslanders, stay home. The safest place for you is in your home. Do the little things, move the stuff from around the yard and you'll be fine.
So with the information that you're getting, I mean, we live in this world now where what is available online through governments, through councils, through the Bureau is amazing. Is there a layer of data that is just slightly more complicated but basically the same time as everyone else is seeing it?
My view is you give the data. Yeah, right. And if you don't, what happens is you then have momentum that gets away from you. So we picked up earlier in the day that some people were saying that the electricity providers would turn off power before the system comes. So we had the head of Energex today come and say,
whack it on the head.
Whack it on the head.
Garbage.
And he said, why would I turn off power? Mother Nature does it for me. I want to keep it on for as long as it can. It was one of those beautiful moments where you say, okay, that's how you address information. And by doing that, the everyday person at home says, okay, great, I get my news from the right source. So I'm a big believer, just keep updating.
So again, you've spoken about the 4 different threats. Again, for those that aren't seeing the latest of the briefings, what are those?
Wind, water, rain and flooding. Yeah, right. And in the end, everyone in that zone is going to get something or a combination of them. That is becoming inevitable. If you look at the system, we've already had winds that have just clocked 100 kilometres an hour on some of those outer islands. So it's coming. Now, you just got to do the little things. And I've seen in these events that if you do those small things, the preparation, and overwhelmingly people get through them. And our job is to just let people know as we get that information. And I've got faith that the vast majority of people do not need the heavy hand of government saying, breathe now, don't drive, don't do this. You give the information, and wherever possible, like I got asked today, will you close the roads today? Well, no, because it's still safe to drive. And I need the ability for the emergency services personnel to go out, and I need the ability for the essential worker to go to the hospital and have the emergency department open. Now, when it reaches the point that it's no longer safe, you put the message out. Okay, here it is. But there's no need to do that well ahead of the time when people can still go about their business.
Again, I don't know if you can talk about it or want to talk about it, but behind the scenes, what's something that is happening in the rooms behind us and around us that is so vital? It might be a really small part or it's a really big part people don't know about what's happening here, informing everything.
So in the room underneath you is teams, and we bring everyone together. So it's SES, it's fireys, it's coppers, it's the Bureau of Meteorology, it's community volunteers, and everyone's in one melting pot, and it's all about information flow. And what we then do is we couple it in, we bring predominantly local government. Now, I'm a big believer in you've got to get councils, because ultimately they're the ones who are running the sandbags and running the evacuation centres. There's no point feeding them what you want them to know. They also should be part of it. You meet a couple of times a day, we make sure that all that information comes up, and it's around the clock. So they're long days, but it's fulfilling to see. It really is.
Final message to Queensland, wherever it happens to be and watching us now.
We'll get it done. We always do, and it's been half a century since a cyclone of this size came to the southern part of the state. But it's not unprecedented. It's happened before. It happened in 1990, in 1973 and in 1954. So they do happen, and you will get through it. And I've seen it at the other end of the state. They made a really, really tough stuff. Queenslanders are pretty tough. We'll be right.
Bloody oath you are. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, PM.
Talk to you soon.